Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated champs, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back. Okay, always locked in, I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask. I just really hit the field. I just really hit the field. I just really hit the field.
And we're back. Welcome to another episode of the Hitting the Field podcast. This is part 2 of our end of semester finals week marathon here at the Hitting the Field podcast. You can check out part 1 on our YouTube channel and on Apple Podcasts at Hitting the Field podcast. But joining me today to talk some college football, Jeremy Brener, of course, hosting this episode of the Hitting the Field podcast as always. But joining me to talk college football, it's a traditional combination, a 1-2 punch. It's the host of Hitting the Fields, might I add, Mr. Kyle Partain. KP, what's going on?
Dude, it has been one of those grinded out kind of weeks, but you know what? Past the difficult stuff and looking forward to talking the best sport aside from college basketball, college football. Looking forward to it.
Beautiful, fantastic, amazing, phenomenal, effervescent, amazing. I
like it.
I lost the adjective I was actually going to say,
today.
But yeah. You know, I have like words that are like stuffed in the back of my head, that I just use whenever I don't know what I'm actually going to say.
Just
and that was
fancy.
one of them. Yeah. Hey, fake it till you make it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
College, baby.
And we got the man in the middle here, Mr. Chris Wolf. Chris, what's shaking and baking?
Nothing much. Just ready to talk some college football and these conference championships this weekend.
Speaking of bacon, what did you eat this morning?
Well, actually, you know what? I went to Dunkin'.
Yeah.
And had those bacon, egg, and cheese wake up wraps.
Really?
So yes, bacon was indeed on the menu this morning.
Yeah. Was it shaking and baking for you, Chris?
It was. Sadly, it wasn't. It was a cleaning morning. Cleaning house.
Ooh.
It was a sleep-in morning for me.
I was cleaning up that meal. That's what I was doing this morning.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah. Gotta keep it clean. Gotta get the, what was it? Like the Swiffer?
The Swiffer?
Yeah.
Swiffer's for the floor, dude.
Yeah. Well, weren't you cleaning the floor as well, Chris?
Yeah.
Were you cleaning the floor?
Vacuuming.
Yeah. Not everything's about you. Not everything's about you, KP. Not everything's about you.
I'm so not used to this.
Yeah. Sweeping, dusting, making sure my room is clean.
You know what we need to do for this podcast? This is the goal for this podcast. We need to clean out the clutter and give the listeners a more firm idea as to what the college football championship weekend we should expect from it and who comes out of it as a top 4 team.
That was a beautiful segue.
I'm really good
Beautiful
at those.
segue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I start somewhere and I figure the way out and I move on. But yes, today we are talking college football championship weekend, which officially kicks off tomorrow night, Friday night, as Utah and Oregon face off in Santa Clara. But the majority of the games take place Saturday, but both are very important because this is, I think, the first time that we've had so many teams able to get that number 4 spot. Mm-hmm. Talk about what it means to have ideally 4 teams that could possibly claim this final spot.
Yeah, this is the first time since that opening inaugural playoff season where I actually feel like there's, more than 2 teams competing for this 4th spot. I mean, back in, I believe it was 2014, the first year of the playoffs, we had TCU, Baylor, and Ohio State all jousting for that spot. Now you add a 4th when you put Georgia in the mix. Baylor once again in the mix. Oklahoma joining that combination now. And, of course, Utah from the Pac-12. So I think it's great to have a bunch of teams vying for that 4th spot for 2 reasons. One, it lives up to the playoffs, mantra of equal access to everyone. And, now it's not the same 5 teams competing for those 4 spots. There's actually, some new faces in there. And I think that's really good for the sport, even though some people, cough, cough, Paul Feinbaum, might not see that. I think it's great for college football. And number two, it's really nice to actually, have this sort of debate to open up a potential playoff expansion debate down the line, because again, all of these teams that are competing, in my eyes, could be seen as worthy and should be seen as worthy for that 4th spot. It's just not enough spaces for it.
Yeah, Chris, how do you feel about there being so many teams able to get it on the very last week of the season?
I think it's, to be honest, I think it's good. It makes championship weekend worth watching. It makes these games mean something, because the Pac-12 championship, the Big 12 championship, the SEC championship, all 3 of those championships are potential play-in games for them, because Georgia, both Big 12 teams, and Utah, they're all easily in contention for that 4th spot, and I think it's really good for the sport too, because it gives the fans something enjoyable to watch, and we get to have debates, and debating is what a lot of people like to do, and there's a lot of valid debates for all 4 teams to get in. I think this could open talks up for the expansion, because the 3 schools that get left out, assuming all this stuff happens, the 3 schools that get left out, they're gonna have something to say, because they're all gonna say we were all deserving.
Well, you could argue the 2, depending on the loser of the Big 12 isn't really going to have that argument. But
yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So I'm going to start this off by listing out the top 8, and I want to go through this. And if you have any qualms over where teams are ranked, let it out, say it. Don't spray it though. Don't spray it. We've already cleaned a little bit. We don't want to clean too much just yet.
Lord.
We have an hour and a half.
That's the theme today.
We have
folks.
an hour and a half. We don't need to spray everything just yet.
Oh my
But okay.
Lord.
So number 1, Ohio State at 12-0. Are we in agreement with Ohio State being number 1 right now?
I'm cool with it. I don't necessarily agree. I think LSU should be 1, but at this point, it's the committee seems pretty dead set on.
It's like
Ohio
they're picking
State
hairs at this point. I think
And,
it's 1A, 1B.
Yeah, and it really it's not going to ruin my day. I don't believe their resume is as strong as the committee's making it out to be. But at the end of the day, it's not something to get all upset about. Ohio State at 1 is fine with me.
And 2, LSU. Do you think? The only team that really could make an argument for number 1 outside of Ohio State is LSU. So, Are you good with LSU being number 2, Chris?
I'm okay with it. I'm kind of with KP on this. The resumes are similar, but I think LSU's is slightly better. And I think if they go into Atlanta and handle Georgia, and maybe Ohio State has a little bit of a struggle with Wisconsin, that might be enough to move them, I think.
Yeah, KP's shaking his head. What do you think?
No, because the committee's doing a thing called resume padding for Ohio State. Look at Wisconsin. You really think they're the 8th best team in the country after that Illinois loss? That's a little iffy. I don't think they're better than Florida, and even Penn State's a stretch. I don't think they could beat Auburn. I don't think they could beat Alabama. I think they'd struggle against Oregon. This Wisconsin team is not the 8th best team in the country, but they're doing a little thing called resume padding so that it makes sense that Ohio State is number 1. That way, in the off chance Georgia happens to beat LSU, there is a firm excuse for LSU and Georgia to not have to play each other in a rematch in the very opening weekend of the playoffs.
That's true.
Yeah. And we have Clemson at number 3. They have the only game this weekend so each of the top 8 is playing in a conference championship this weekend. The only team that does not play a team in the top 15 is Clemson. They play number 23 Virginia, who joined the rankings this week. So Clemson, they seem like they have a pretty simple road. I do want to suggest Clemson. Is there a way Clemson can jump up, possibly, or fall back?
You need losses. You literally need losses. That's the only way they jump up, because, say that LSU and Ohio State both lose somehow.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to give you 3 options. You get a pencil, you get a pen, or you get a Sharpie. Okay? Or you get a tattoo. Because Sharpie, you can get Sharpie out. If it's on your skin or something like that, you can get it out. Tattoos are permanent. So, number 3 for Clemson, are you using a pen, pencil, Sharpie, or tattoo it?
I'm probably going to tattoo this.
Yeah, well, I'm going to Sharpie it. Just, there is an outside chance that Georgia can beat LSU. It's not a high chance, so I'm not betting on Clemson at 100% to be number 3. they could jump up to that number 2 spot should LSU get upset. So I'm going to go with the Sharpie on that one.
All right. I'm kind of in agreement with that. I think there's a chance that, like, if Georgia beats LSU, that Georgia could jump up. I mean,
I thought they jumped to 2, maybe.
Maybe to 2. Do you think they
because I've seen because if you compare the resumes are nowhere near Clemson's. I mean, Georgia would have wins against LSU.
We'll go through.
I got to think about that one. One thing is called South Carolina.
Yeah.
Common opponent, undefeated record for Clemson. Clemson gets it at number 2.
Fair enough. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty, the games for this weekend that matter. And we're going to start at number 4, Georgia, taking on number 2, LSU. Now, Georgia has the inside track. They are in control of their own destiny. They are the only team that is on the outside looking in, quote unquote, that has control. Like, they are in if they win. No other team can really say that. So, Georgia, LSU. Let's dive deep into this game right now. Georgia, KP, finish the sentence for me. Georgia will win this football game because
luck. They are going to need a lot of luck because, quite frankly, I'm not convinced that they have the offensive firepower to keep up with LSU. I think the defense is fine, but Joe Burrow and that offense are still going to put up 30 points in this game probably, and I'm not sure Georgia has the consistency or ability on offense to put up 30 points against this LSU Tigers defense, especially with, suspensions, injuries. Swift may not even play. I'm not sure what his status is. And it's just, Fromm has not shown that he's a consistent enough quarterback. And don't get me wrong, when he's on, he's on. And Georgia can play with most, if not all, teams in the country when he is on. But I can't rely on him to be on every single game, especially when you start to play these top 3, top 4 teams. And LSU's defense, while it's not the best, it is, it's solid, and it's still an SEC defense that's allowed them to go undefeated in SEC play.
Yeah, Jake Fromm on the year, 2,385 yards, 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Jake Fromm 2 years ago was seen as this guy that was pretty much like unbeatable almost. Like he was 1/2 away from being a true freshman winning the national championship. And it kind of blew up in his face. And ever since then, Georgia has kind of lost a step a little bit. Mm-hmm. So with Georgia, this is a chance, I think, for Jake Fromm to kind of silence his doubters a little bit. This is the perfect stage, the perfect opportunity to do that. If he can beat LSU, I think he'll have more obstacles in front of him if he makes it to the college football playoff, because you're only as good as your last game, but this could be his last game if he loses. So, Chris, is Jake Fromm the X factor for Georgia here, or is it somebody else?
I think he is the X factor because he is literally the last 4 or 5 games, he's completing less than 50% of his passes. And some of these teams he's playing in Missouri, Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky, he threw for 35 yards against Kentucky. That will never win you a game against any of these teams. Mm-hmm. And then last game, he looked better than he had been, but he's still under 50% completion. That's not going to be against Georgia Tech. That's a 3-4 win team. You're not going to win. You're not going to be able to put up points doing that, being inaccurate against teams that will. Against the most accurate quarterback in the country, and Joe Burrow. He's at 78%. Mm-hmm. That is by far ridiculous. I'm just going to say that. But Jay Fromm needs to be able to hit his receivers, and he might not have. He's not going to have one of his favorite ones in Kager. He's out. He's already ruled out. George Pickens, his second receiver, he's suspended for a first half for a boneheaded fight in that Georgia Tech game. And your 2 best receivers are going to not play, at least for a half, for Pickens. And DeAndre Swift, probably that's the best player on that offense.
1,200 yards this year, 7 touchdowns.
His status is uncertain right now, so we don't know if he'll be able to go, or if he does go, will he only be at 70%? Will he not be able to run as much? So that'll all depend on it. I think he does need DeAndre Swift because that will help the play action, and Swift is a very good receiver out of the backfield too. He can give Jake Fromm screens, and that will give yards and easy completions.
But he can't do that if he doesn't play.
Yeah, if he doesn't play, I just don't. I think if DeAndre Swift doesn't play, I just do not see how there's any chance for Georgia to win this game.
So let me get this question for you guys. LSU. If LSU and Georgia is the highest ranked matchup this week, 2 versus 4. So and LSU's playing. I mean, technically it's a neutral site, but they're playing in Atlanta. It's a slight advantage for Georgia in terms of that. I mean, I say slight because it is the SEC championship game. LSU ain't that much further away, but do you think that will play a role on Saturday, Kyle?
I mean, it's hard to argue with your home fans, and I'll tell you there's going to be a lot of Bulldogs fans there. We saw it 2 years ago when Georgia rematched against Auburn in the SEC championship. That Auburn team, now granted there were some injuries for that team, but that team looked nothing like the Auburn team that manhandled Georgia the first time they played each other, and then, Georgia turns around, manhandles them. Last season, Georgia's up big on Alabama at halftime. It only took a miraculous half by Hurts to rally Alabama and get them past that Bulldogs team. So yeah, Georgia looks completely different. They look much, much more efficient and more effective in Atlanta. And of course it's going to play a role. The fans are, Georgia fans are crazy. You've seen the dude who has the shoulder pads with the spikes. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Those fans are absolutely wild. They're going to get into the game. They're going to make it extremely difficult for Burrow. But you got to realize Burrow won in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
There is maybe no harder place to win in all of college football, neutral site or road or home, than Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Longest. That was the longest active home winning streak.
Remind me, who's got the longest home winning streak now?
U.
Yee.
C.
F.
Knights. Go Knights. All right. So, but here's the thing. Georgia's number 4. They're the highest ranked one-loss team. Their one loss comes to South Carolina, 20-17. Let's say they win that game. Had they won that game, they would be the 4th undefeated team this season. Where would they be in this thing? You're putting up 3 fingers, both of you. I'm going to assume that means number 3 in the rankings. And Clemson number 4?
Yeah, that's a good assumption. 3 fingers, 3rd place.
I assumed correctly?
I think I
Thank
like
goodness.
your chances of guessing that one correctly.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, they'd put them over Clemson. They'd have the common opponents. They'd both be undefeated, and Georgia has the better wins. When you look at Florida, you look at Notre Dame, you look at Auburn. They've got the better wins. Now, don't get me wrong, Notre Dame's not an elite win, but it's still better than anything Clemson can put on their resume to this point. Maybe you can argue Texas A&M for Clemson's a good win, but Georgia also beat them, so there's nothing that Clemson has on their resume that Georgia wouldn't have at that point. The only difference is the undefeated record and that win over South Carolina. That's what's got Clemson over Georgia, and if Georgia doesn't slip up and doesn't somehow lose that game, I still am not sure how they managed to lose that one. Georgia would be number 3 and may already be a lock for the playoffs, even with a loss to LSU at that point.
These playoffs may all, if that loss never happens, the 4 you see right now probably would be the 4 you see again.
Yeah, I agree. Just it would be obviously the order would shake up after however that goes down, that potential undefeated matchup of Georgia and LSU. But at the end of the day, they did lose to South Carolina. They are number 4, and to Jeremy's point, they're the only team out of the 4 competing where they are 100% in if they win, regardless of what else happens. Georgia will be in the playoffs if they win, likely as the number 3 seed behind Clemson and in front of LSU. And honestly, that may set up a peach bowl of LSU or of Clemson versus Georgia in Atlanta. How fun would that be? Clemson and Georgia, both close to home, both crazy fan bases. Probably won't happen because I don't think Georgia wins this game, but we can always speculate.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Now, LSU, they play the highest team left. Would a win here give them a chance at number 1? Chris?
I think it all depends on how you win. Because if Ohio State just needs, all they need to do is just handle Wisconsin, and they're going to be number 1. I mean, I don't care how much Georgia would win. I mean, how much LSU beats Georgia by? If Ohio State goes to beat Wisconsin by 30, that's automatically the number 1 seed. Now, if Ohio State has to win like on a game-winning field goal, and then LSU wins by like 30, then you have an argument, I think.
No, I mean it's been pretty obvious throughout the season that the committee values Ohio State's resume. I guess it's that non-conference matchup against Cincinnati that seems to be the difference, maybe. Yeah, in the initial rankings, we saw LSU at number 2. We saw all it took was a game against Penn State for Ohio State's resume to suddenly leapfrog LSU's. And now you add a Michigan win and another Wisconsin win. I'm not sure a single win over Georgia, regardless of how good that is. I'm not sure the committee's going to value it enough, even though it should be valued. In my opinion, that's the toughest schedule in college football.
Can't you say that LSU, now that Bama lost to Auburn, that win is, I guess, seen as lesser in value because they're a 2-loss team rather than a 1-loss team?
Yeah, but you'd also get some more value from the Auburn win. It's
That's
a trade-off.
But
They also
I mean,
beat Auburn.
it's 3-loss Auburn though.
I mean,
It's a win against 3-loss Auburn and a win against 2-loss Bama instead of,
So, but for Ohio State, we're looking at soon to be a 3-loss Wisconsin, a 2-loss Penn State, a 2-loss Michigan, a 2-loss Cincinnati.
yeah, 3-loss Michigan. Yeah,
I think
No, you're right. 3-loss Michigan.
3-loss Michigan.
None of those, to me,
That's true.
is as good as 10-2 Florida.
that's true.
I think Texas's struggles probably hurt LSU in that. I think if Texas were better, I think if Texas were playing this weekend, LSU maybe won.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
can see
mean,
that.
yeah, I do think that Texas loss plays a lot into it, but at the same time, we've seen over the course of these playoff rankings, I'm not sure that Big 12 win would have been enough for LSU anyways, the way the Big 12's seemingly been quote-unquote devalued this season, although, granted, they are making a push now. I don't think that Texas win, even if Texas is, I don't know, let's say they're 8-4, 9-3 right now, I don't think it makes that big of a difference.
Yeah. So, guys, I want you to close your eyes. Both of you, close your eyes. I want to transport you to a time. Let's say July 4th. Okay, July 4th, okay? What if I told you on July 4th that in 5 months from now, that the Utah Utes would be playing for a potential top 4 spot in championship weekend? Open your eyes. What would you have told me at that time?
I mean, the general thought would be, you're crazy, and completely honest with myself, I would not have seen it coming. I still am a little surprised Utah's at number 5, but they've earned it. I feel like their play has earned that ranking. I just did not expect Utah. I thought Oregon was going to pretty much cruise through the Pac-12 this season, in complete honesty, and for the most part they have.
Did, yeah.
For the most part have, but Utah has been extremely impressive, and if not for that one loss against USC where there were injuries and all sorts of other things plaguing Utah, they probably win that game, and they're probably sitting at number 4 right now if they're unbeaten anyways.
I mean, 4 versus 5 at this point isn't too much of a difference.
No, as long as Georgia loses,
I
there's
think
no difference.
I think 4 through 7 is really close. 4 through 7 is really close, in my opinion.
But yeah, good for Utah. They've been exceptional this season, and to me, they haven't been getting the proper media credit, and the
as would be for a Pac-12 team,
right?
Qualifying bomb.
Yeah, you look at I don't know, 3-loss Auburn, right? They're up to number 11 now. Granted, Auburn,
That's good wins.
They have really good wins, but the general consensus is Auburn would smoke Utah in a game, and I'm not sure that's the case. Utah's defense has been unbelievable. Their offense has been seriously undervalued. Huntley's top 5 QBR, total QBR in the country, 1 spot behind Jalen Hurts, who is maybe the most valuable player to his team of any team in the country. Zach Moss, he's got 30 more yards than Oklahoma's leading rusher, who also happens to be Jalen Hurts. So I mean, the differences here between Utah's offense and Oklahoma's offense, for example, who a lot of people say is one of the best and is one of the best in the country, they're really not that big of differences as far as the offenses are concerned. I just don't think people have been able to watch Utah, and it's disappointing that we're in an age in college football where Cinderella is frowned upon now, and no one wants. The general argument is, no one wants to see Utah. It's just Utah. I'm like, that's the whole point. That's what makes college sports and sports in general great, is this kind of thing.
I agree, because people that watch it. I watch a lot of Pac-12 football, so I know a lot about Pac-12 football. This defense, I think it's for real. I think this defense is for real. The offense, I do need to see it this weekend. Like tomorrow night against Oregon. Oregon's another. I mean, yeah, they had that slip up against Arizona State. Oregon's a top 10 in points allowed. They're 15.8 points a game. That's still really good. It's just so easy to be the best defense that they play against, and we'll get to see if this Utah offense will be good enough. I know their defense is going to show up. I mean, they've shown up all year. They're giving up 56 rushing yards a game. That is just mind-boggling. Some people get that on one run, on one play. They give it up for a whole game. They've only given up just over 670 rushing yards the whole season on about 2 yards a carry. That's an unbelievable front seven right there.
Yeah, let me tell you one thing about Utah. They're being undervalued when their own rival school, fans from their own rival school, BYU, are vouching for them to be a top 5 team in the nation right now. When your own rival who hates you more than anything, I mean, come on. Would you ever vouch for USF to be in the top 10? Would you ever?
Honestly,
I would never find myself rooting for USF. Unless it directly benefits UCF, I would never find myself rooting for USF.
I think in a way that it does, because it's more, it gives your conference more respect.
But
BYU and Utah, that's a bit of a different story, only because BYU and Utah aren't in the same conference. It's not like BYU gained something from Utah.
That's what I'm getting at. You know it's a big... You know they seem for real when that kind of situation is happening, where BYU and Utah would never support each other. Ever. That is one of the most heated West Coast rivalries ever, and their own fans are vouching for the other team. That just doesn't happen.
So here's my question for you. Does Cinderella make it to the ball?
I'm going entirely off of Georgia losing, which I do believe will happen.
If Georgia loses,
I believe Utah is in. I believe
obviously
the eye
Utah
test
would have to win as well.
Well, yes, but I believe based on the eye test, which is the most valued thing from the committee this season, is the eye test, and I believe Utah passes that eye test with flying colors. I don't think it's remotely close when you look at the way Oklahoma's had to win several games this season. Baylor's the same exact situation. The Big 12, those two teams in the Big 12 have really squeaked by, both of them by TCU. Baylor had to squeak by West Virginia. That shouldn't happen, and I mean it did, and kudos for being able to pull out those wins for those two teams, but Utah has looked the part of an elite team.
Mm-hmm. I have to agree with that. I also do think, but I will say this: I think Utah needs to make some kind of statement, though. I don't think it could be a close game because Oregon is ranked 13, and Baylor and Oklahoma are 6 and 7. So they do get a better win regardless of how they win. They will have a better win. So I think Utah needs to make some kind of statement, like win by 3 scores or something. They win by 3 scores. I'm not saying it's going to be a firmly locked, but I think it should be about an 80% chance they should make it.
So, pencil, pen, Sharpie, tattoo. Utah wins if Georgia loses and they win.
I'm giving that one a pencil.
A pencil.
Yeah, it's a
because Chris brings up a really valid point. We go back to that inaugural year of the college football playoffs. Ohio State sitting at number 6 going into championship weekend, and they obliterate Wisconsin 59-0, launches them up to number 4. That kind of performance can and will get Oklahoma/Baylor over Utah if Utah struggles. So, to Chris's point, it absolutely needs to be a statement for Utah, and that is why it's a pencil and not a pen.
Okay. Chris?
I would say that. If Oregon were 1 loss, I would say pen. If Oregon were 1 loss, I would say pen. But because Oregon has 2 losses, it's got to be a pencil. Because already there's a ton of fan base. There's a ton of media, a ton of people within the college football front that nobody really wants to see them. They want to see Oklahoma. They want Oklahoma in. Utah needs to show the entire country that they need to be in, not them. That's what they need to do. If they do a Ohio State Wisconsin thing, I don't think if they do a Ohio State Wisconsin thing and they just blow Oregon out by 40, I don't think the Big 12 championship matters. Then that type of performance, the Big 12 championship doesn't matter. I don't think I think Utah's in with that type of performance.
So, Chris, you're an Oregon guy. Make the case for Oregon here to win this football game, because Oregon is not a pushover here. It's not going to be an easy game for Utah because they got to play Oregon, and Oregon's lost just 2 games all year, both by less than a score. Both could have been wins for Oregon. So Oregon will win this game because finish the sentence.
Of the potential top 5 pick in the NFL draft. That's the reason. He's got to play well.
And that being Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert has got to play well. He has got, because I've seen some games. He's been really good this season. I mean, he's thrown 31 touchdowns, just 5 picks. He's one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the country. But I've seen occasionally in these games that he turns the ball over. He's inaccurate on passes. He doesn't get the offense going. And I think he has to have a big game for them to win this game, because I don't expect this team to run the football well. They do have one of the best offensive lines. I don't expect them to run well against this Utah front. This Utah front is legit, and this guy is going to need to have a great performance. He's going to have to and this also helps him too. It also helps the draft stock. If he's able to play extremely low against this defense, that will boost him up as well as the Ducks. But even as an Oregon fan, I don't expect them to win this game.
Because, I mean, I guess, look, Oregon does have something to play for here. A win for them is a virtual lock for the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, it's a lock. It's a lock for the Rose Bowl. They will
that's something to play for.
It's 11 wins too. They get 11 wins. They get 11 wins. That'll be the most wins they have since they went to the playoff in the first year. Mm-hmm. So they have not won double. This is the first year they won double-digit games since that year. So this is already a great season.
They're back. Quack quack.
But
the quack is back.
It's going to be a physical football.
The quack attack.
It'll be a physical football game.
So, I'm going to ask you guys, or do you think... So are you guys picking Utah? You picking Oregon? And I want to score. I want to score.
Yeah, I'm absolutely taking Utah in this game. And we were talking about this, Chris and I, a little bit before this podcast got underway. The weather conditions are going to be horrendous in this game. And to Chris's point, Oregon is not going to be able to run the ball effectively against Utah at all, which puts the ball and puts the game in Justin Herbert's hands. In these kind of conditions, I'm not sure that's a recipe for success for Oregon. This kind of situation, this kind of game, is exactly what Utah wants. It benefits Utah tremendously. Utah is built for a grind-it-out kind of game, and in this scenario, I'm not even sure it's a grinded-out kind of game. I think Utah may run all over Oregon. I don't think it's... It might get ugly. I know Chris is probably cringing to hear that, but it may be looking like a final score of like 28-10, somewhere in that range, Utah.
Chris, give me a score.
I think this stays close in the first half, but in the end, I think Tyler Huntley is going to prove the country. We all know I think most people know who Zach Moss is. Now, no one really knows who Tyler Huntley is. I think he's going to put his name. He's going to put a stamp on his name because no one knows. Not many people know this. He is second in the country in completion percentage.
That's pretty good.
Behind the Heisman winner Joe Burrow. He completes 65% on passes that travel 20 yards or more down the field. That is some quarterbacks don't complete 65% total. This dude's doing it on deep balls. So he has been extremely accurate, efficient, only 2 picks all season. And I think he's gonna have a statement game. Utah wins 34-13.
Yeah, that's another blowout.
Another blowout. I think that the weather conditions will actually play a role because it really benefits Utah.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Benefits Utah because you're looking at that. They're averaging what, like the front seven, like they give up like less than 3 yards a carry.
About 2.2.
2.2, almost 2 yards a carry.
That doesn't win you anything.
Yeah, and if if the game's going to be rainy, it's going to force Herbert to hand the ball off or make some errant throws in some wonky weather.
And I have one other thing about Oregon. I don't trust the receivers. They have still this season have drop problems. And when you're raining, drop problems will occur, even in the rain with good receivers. When your receivers don't always catch the football, it could be disastrous. I mean, like that plays a big role.
Looking like Philly out there.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I was going to pick Oregon coming into this, but I think you guys have convinced me that Utah is the real deal. But look, I think these teams are a lot closer than what you guys think, and I actually think it's going to be a pretty close game. I think it's going to be closer than your 34-13 prediction or your, what was it?
28-10.
28-10 prediction. I don't think it's going to be 3 scores. I think, Utah is favored by a touchdown in this game. I will give them a touchdown. I'm going to say 27-20. Something like that. I don't.
So you trust the Oregon offense?
I mean, I don't. They're going to score 20 points. That's 15 points below their average.
I get where you're coming.
Because the thing is, the offense is not going to be.
I'm just looking at this.
The offense isn't just going to be a problem for Oregon. It's going to be a problem for Utah as well.
I'm just looking at this. Oregon, the last 2 games, they only had 7 points with about 8-9 minutes left in the fourth quarter against Arizona State. That's a good defense. That's not an amazing defense. Oregon State last week, that is one of the worst defenses in the country, and they only had 17 points.
But do you think that you know what, I hate to say this, but I do think that the environment in college football matters here. Like Oregon at Arizona State, I mean that's a road game against a team that, I mean, Arizona State, not one of the more revered programs in that Pac-12. It's kind of like a going through the motions kind of game. But this is the Pac-12 championship game, spot at the Rose Bowl on the line, chance to put your draft stock at the peak that it has ever been on a national stage. There is an 8:00 game. There's no excuse for people not to watch this game.
It's the only game. It's the
only game. It's secluded from everyone because it gives people a chance to see the Pac-12 without any distractions, not late at night.
This is the reason why it's tough for me. This is the first championship game Justin Herbert is playing in his whole career. He has not played in like a game like this in his whole career.
Neither has
Tyler
Huntley.
Huntley didn't play last year, but a lot of that team was there last year. From that last year's Pac-12 championship that ended 10-3 in the Washington. They lost to Washington off a pick 6. That's the only touchdown in the end was a pick 6. So this Utah team has a chip on its shoulder. It has the playoff berth, and it also has the hunger to win a Pac-12 championship. They want revenge in the Pac-12 championship to avenge what they did last year, and they want to make a statement to prove the country. Now I know Justin Herbert is great. He needs to prove it. I've seen some big games against these ranked opponents. Like, he's played against Stanford when they were top 10. They played against Auburn, and his team has fell short both times. Prove it to me, prove it to me.
It's prove it day.
I've got a little bit of a beef with that environment topic that you bring up there.
Fine.
Let's go back to that.
Bring
Arizona
it out.
State
Cut it out.
game,
Let's
right?
marinate it.
Let's go back to that Arizona State game. I get what you're saying. It's Arizona State. You're not playing USC. You're not playing in a championship game, but you're playing in prime time. There is no reason to sleep and go through the motions in prime time. And I'm not convinced Oregon was just going through the motions. I truly think the bright lights may have actually impacted the Oregon Ducks. The same way you look at it week 1. They could not finish. These big-time games are very difficult for young or inexperienced teams to be able to perform in. And granted, Utah is in a very similar position to Oregon, but they got up and they did what they should have done against Colorado last week. Utah is much more, ready. They're much more ready to be able to compete and excel in this type of environment. The environment is indeed going to be a factor, but not in the beneficial way towards Oregon that I think you're thinking of.
Could you say that Oregon doesn't really have a whole lot of pressure here?
They don't.
They don't.
I agree.
They have much less to lose than Utah. Utah can lose. Basically, Utah either makes it to the playoff or they may at worst they make it to the Rose Bowl if they win, or if they lose this game, they go to some random bowl.
Yeah, they're not in the New Year's Six if they lose this game.
They can't be. A two-loss team is not going to be in there.
If Utah loses this game,
so would you say the pressure is on Utah to perform here more than it is Oregon?
It's on Oregon because it's on Utah because Oregon can still lose this game and still go to the Rose Bowl still. Like that's still potentially. Yeah. Like if Utah makes the playoff, they'll go to the Rose Bowl. Yeah. So it's like they could still go to the Rose Bowl either way potentially. Utah, you lose this game, you're going to the Alamo Bowl most likely.
Yeah.
Like that's the difference from playoff to non-New Year's Six. That's a huge difference in one game.
It is. So we're going to go down the rankings once more. Now we have number 6 Oklahoma and number 7 Baylor. Mm-hmm. So this is a very interesting game. It's a rematch from a couple weeks ago where Baylor fell short. It's their only loss of the year. So Baylor can beat every team on their schedule here with a win. Mm-hmm. Now, who has the better chance to make it to the top 4 with a win in this game?
I'm going to go with the unpopular opinion, and I'm going to say Baylor, if they win, has a better resume than Oklahoma if Oklahoma wins.
I agree.
Purely because Baylor would not have a loss to an unranked team. Baylor will have beaten a top 10 team. Baylor will have also beaten several top 25 teams when you look at Oklahoma State. Is Iowa State still ranked? I'm not sure Iowa State's still ranked anymore.
I don't believe they are.
Regardless, those are still some decent quality wins that the committee has shown that they have some sort of respect for. I believe Baylor, with a win, has a more solid resume. Now, that's not going to matter if Utah takes care of business or Georgia takes care of business. But if we see chaos, if we see Utah struggle and Georgia lose, I think Baylor's in if Baylor handles Oklahoma.
That I actually agree with that because when I look at these two teams, Oklahoma has looked really bad. Even in wins, they've looked bad. You know what Baylor's done the last 2 games ever since that loss? Handled Texas better than what Oklahoma did against Texas, and beat up Kansas. Kansas is not a good team, but they beat them up with how they're supposed to by 55 points, which is actually by more than what Oklahoma did. Oklahoma beat them by 25. Baylor beat them by 55. So it's like, I mean, I look at Baylor. Baylor's been handling their opponents better than Oklahoma has. And even the Oklahoma State game, Baylor looked better against Oklahoma State than I think Oklahoma did, too. And that was with their starter. That was with Tylan Wallace, too, still playing. So, and I just look. I think a win for Baylor does a lot more than a win for Oklahoma, because Baylor wouldn't. Yeah, to Jeremy's point, they would have beaten every team in the Big 12, and this would be on a neutral site too. So it's like and we need to, and I think the committee's still going to remember that Baylor was handling this team for a lot of the game in the first meeting too. So
they didn't come out with the win at the end.
They didn't come out with a win, but they will see if Baylor handles Oklahoma. They will see maybe that was just a fluke win for Oklahoma potentially.
Yeah, no, I do want to circle back. I think Baylor does need to actually prove that they are better than Oklahoma for 4 quarters, not a half, because they have. Again, they've looked better these last two games, but Baylor has had their struggles this season in the Big 12. They snuck by TCU. They snuck by West Virginia. It has not been a dominant run overall by any means, and that is why they need a big performance just as much as Oklahoma needs, because, again, in this season, the eye test is what the committee has seemed to value more than anything, and their resumes... They're both good, they're not elite, and the eye test has been good at best.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, with the eye test thing, it's a fact because during this last stretch where Oklahoma's beaten 2 top 25 teams and Utah's beaten nobody, but yet Utah still stays ahead of them, that's to your point. Utah just looks better, and if you don't look good against, even if you beat Baylor again and you don't look good, you beat almost the same way you beat them last time, where you had to maybe come back and win. That's going to show the committee you didn't really get better. You were what you thought. And if Utah goes and wins fairly easily, I just don't. Oklahoma can't jump. I think Baylor has a better chance to jump than Oklahoma because Baylor would have wins over every team, and their one loss would be
to the team that they
3
beat.
points to a top 10 team,
and to a team that they would end up beating.
3 teams to like a top 10. 3 points to a top 10 team, and then opposed to Oklahoma giving almost 50 to an unranked team.
Right.
So I agree with you guys because I think that Baylor, I think that beating every team on your schedule, point in the resume is huge. Now, so here's the thing. So is there a chance that Oklahoma or Baylor, if Utah wins, jumps them?
Yes, but it's got to be a
handling.
An eye test win.
An epic proportions kind of victory like Ohio State beat Wisconsin back in the day. And it may even have to be that plus a combination of Utah struggling. But yeah, they're going to have to show that they can absolutely take care of business against a high-quality opponent in the top 10. If they can't show that they are unequivocally one of the 4 best teams, I'm not sure their resume or eye test is enough to bump them over Utah, assuming Utah, does their thing.
So I'll say this. I like the idea of Baylor coming in, but I got to make the case for Oklahoma because Oklahoma did beat this team, and Oklahoma should be considered the favorite in this game.
Oh, absolutely.
But also here's the case for Oklahoma to be in the top 4. Do you believe that Oklahoma has the best chance to beat a number 1 team out of the teams that could possibly be that 4th team? Georgia, Oklahoma, Baylor, and Utah. Okay, so if not Oklahoma, which one of these 4 teams has the best chance to make an upset and beat that number 1 team, whether it's Ohio State or LSU?
I mean, I think it's very tough because most people are going to say Georgia because it's Georgia. They've been dominant.
Georgia would move up to 2 possibly.
If Georgia beats LSU, they absolutely are capable of winning against any one of those top 4 teams or top 3 teams.
I'm going to do more of the argument for the 5, 6, and 7.
Okay.
Because if most people expect Georgia to lose, so it's like, okay, they wouldn't be in the conversation anymore. I'm going to do with the 3, the Utah, Baylor, and Oklahoma. I'm going to slightly edge Utah because they play both sides of the ball. They are fit. They're top 9. They're one of 3 teams top 9 efficiency and they're one of 4 teams in top 10 in efficiency on offense and defense. So they are good on both sides. Oklahoma, yes, they've been improved this season. I've still seen tons of slip-ups on their defense at times. I mean, giving up 41 to Iowa State, giving up 48 to Kansas State. I mean, 31 first-half points to Baylor. So it's like I've seen a ton of slip-ups on that defense. And same with the offense. The offense may average 44 points a game, and it might be statistically one of the best in the country. I've seen times where they struggle to score anything. Like they scored 35 in the first half against Iowa State, 7 in the second half. Mm-hmm. They scored 17 early against Kansas State. They scored 6 points from the early second quarter to the fourth quarter. They scored 6 points.
Yeah.
And against TCU, they were at 21-0. They scored 7 points the rest of the game. I mean,
right.
I've seen too many times where they've been stagnant both sides of the ball.
So
I'll play devil's advocate. Why not?
All right,
I'll vouch for Georgia here. You look at their resume, you look at their schedule. For the most part, they have held very solid teams to under 25 points for the most part. You look at Auburn; they gave up 14 to Auburn.
Good.
Florida, 20 for Florida, something along that range.
Yeah, I think it was 20.
Notre Dame had
maybe?
what?
24.
24? Yeah, and
no, 17. Only 17.
17 for Notre Dame. That's what I'm getting at. Is Georgia has a very good defense that has been tested.
Georgia has proven they've been battle tested.
They've been tested against quality opponents. Utah, not quite to the same extent. I don't think Utah's played the same quality of opponents. So if Georgia takes care of LSU and somehow beats LSU, they absolutely
beat Ohio State.
have the best chance.
So
if they do beat LSU, that's those are your 4 teams in some order, and I believe Georgia has a legitimate shot to win the whole thing if they can beat LSU this weekend.
So I want to bring this back to the Big 12 here and talk about Oklahoma because I think that this topic has to be discussed and at least has to be said. Oklahoma is the most brand, is the biggest brand of the teams that are, fighting for a spot. The 5, 6, 7. And they have the most marketable player, potential Heisman winner, Jalen Hurts. More people know who Jalen Hurts is than Huntley, because
I'm not gonna forget Charlie Brewer from Baylor.
Excuse me, yes, Charlie Brewer. But like Jalen Hurts, he was an Alabama quarterback. He's Oklahoma. He's got the number one stats. He's 1,200 yards rushing and over 3,000 yards passing. Like, is that a factor here? I think it has to be. It has to be a factor for the college football playoff, whether they like to say it or not. I think the college football playoff wants to be, rank with integrity and rank which they believe are the 4 best football teams, but there is somewhat of a bias there, and there has to be, because the college football playoff is also about making money, and Utah is not as much of a moneymaker as Oklahoma is, and Huntley not as much of a moneymaker as Hurts is. So that's why I actually think Oklahoma, with a good win, regardless of what Utah does, gets in.
I mean, I can't argue that, because we've seen the committee do that. We've seen this season. We've seen the committee keep brands ahead, like Alabama, for example. They've kept them ahead the whole time until last weekend, because that brand, they just assume, Tua's down, but we still think Alabama is still really good. And they kind of proved that wrong last weekend, that they aren't as good, as they weren't a top 5 team. So we've seen that happen. And if Oklahoma wins, I think it's not just Oklahoma wins. I think if Jalen Hurts has a huge game, because they want to. If Jalen Hurts has a huge game, they're going to be like, we want to see this guy against Ohio State or LSU.
And like, even if Baylor like hands it to Oklahoma, I think Utah actually gets in. That's my thing. I think if Utah wins and Baylor wins, then Utah gets in. I think if Utah and Oklahoma both win, I think Oklahoma gets in.
Here's the thing. This is, I believe this has the makings of an incredibly important decision for not just this season, but for the future.
For seasons in the future,
for the future of college football. And to Chris's point and to your point, Jeremy, we have seen that brand name be a huge factor in where teams are placed in these rankings. Alabama was a good team with Mac Jones. They are a good team. They're not an elite team, but they were still at number 5 with nothing on their resume. Again, Bama is Bama. Oklahoma is Oklahoma. You look at this, and it's going to be very difficult for the committee to get past the name on that jersey and the name of that logo. But there is a little bit of hope here, because they did what I did not believe they had the guts to do, and they dropped Utah, Bama out of a New Year's Six game.
Way out.
So that tells me there is at least a chance. And I have to believe that the committee will do what is right for college football and not what is right for money. And that is a really, really bad place to put my faith. But I'm going to hope that the committee does what they should do and place it on the integrity of the game and not the brand of the team.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I mean, they have been with seeds like 5 through about 8. They've been pretty consistent with like the Big 12 and Pac-12 teams. They've been pretty consistent with those. When assuming they continued to win, they were consistently keeping Oregon ahead of Utah, even though I thought Utah was better. They kept putting Oregon ahead. Same with Baylor and Oklahoma. Obviously Oklahoma beat Baylor, so Baylor was also going to be behind them. So It's like they were consistently moving them up together. And if Utah wins and Oklahoma wins, I'm just like, it's going to be like this. You've kept Oklahoma behind Utah despite winning multiple top 25 games. You still kept them behind Utah. Utah finally gets a top 15 win, but yet they get bumped down. It would not be consistent, and it wouldn't make a ton of sense. Like, you've pretty much said that Utah is eye test better than Oklahoma the whole season, pretty much. Just about the last half of the season. You've been pretty much saying that. Utah finally plays a good opponent and wins, but then you go around and say Oklahoma's better. I'm just like, that. It's really hard for me to put my head around that.
Yeah.
That confused me.
We're gonna move one more spot down in the rankings here, and we're gonna talk about the Ohio State-Wisconsin game. I think we're all under agreement that Ohio State is going to win this game. Mm-hmm. I think they are better than Wisconsin, and not by a little bit, by a little more than a little bit. But we do have to discuss the possibility of Wisconsin winning here. So I'm just going to ask you straight up: if Wisconsin beats Ohio State, a champion, like a conference champion, and arguably the hardest conference in the country, against the current number 1 team, can Wisconsin possibly get in?
That is the highest they get.
No, they have no chance. They already did this with Penn State a couple seasons ago. Just because you win the Big Ten, even as a 2-loss team, you don't get granted access. Ohio State's in. Ohio State's a lock. Wisconsin can't make the jump over a 1-loss Big 12 champ and a 1-loss Pac-12 champ. I even think Georgia stays in front of Wisconsin if Wisconsin wins and Georgia loses. It's just... Wisconsin does not have the resume. They have not passed the eye test the entire season, and they have by far the ugliest loss, aside from South Carolina, of any of the top 10 teams. And it's just, there is no chance for Wisconsin, no matter how much they beat Ohio State. They could beat Ohio State 100-0, and they would still not be a top 4 team at the end of the season. Oh, that would absolutely be a game to see.
That would be a game to see.
5 is the highest I could put them. At the very highest. That's the very highest I would put them, because obviously that would be the best win of the whole season by any team. But you slipped against Illinois, and same with the Penn State thing. They looked at that Michigan huge bad loss to Michigan, and that was the reason why they didn't get in. The Penn State didn't get in. They lost a bad loss to Michigan, and same with what was it? Ohio State. 2 years ago.
Iowa.
You could not get past that Iowa loss. Yeah, you lost to Oklahoma. You could deal with loss to Oklahoma. Iowa City struck again. Mm-hmm. So it's just like Iowa City is. Obviously Iowa City struck a lot of teams' playoff hopes away. Michigan and Ohio State.
So,
and Minnesota too. They just struck Iowa City. They never go to the championship game except regarding for that 1 year. In the first year of the playoff, they have not 2 years, like I think 3 years ago, they made the Big Ten championship, almost made the playoff. But aside from that year, they're just a playoff crusher.
They're Auburn. They're the Big Ten's Auburn.
They're just they're a playoff crusher. They're not really much of a playoff team, but more than a crusher when you have to go to Iowa City. But back to the Wisconsin.
Because the other team on top here, yeah.
You cannot get past Illinois loss. I mean. You cannot get past Illinois. I think the only way a 2-loss team gets in is exactly how Auburn did it.
Yeah, you can get past the Illinois loss if they had beaten Ohio State in the regular season, but with 2 losses and one of them being a blowout loss to Ohio State, the other being a shocking loss to Illinois, this Wisconsin team has 0% chance to make the playoffs, even with the most chaos possible.
Yeah. So we got about 30-ish minutes left, but I want to. I have a plan, guys. But I want you. I want you to tell me what game you're looking forward to the most this weekend, and why. Okay. I'm going to start with KP.
I think the game I'm looking forward to the most is the Big 12 championship. I think the stakes of this game are higher than any others, purely because both teams are competing for playoff lives. In the SEC, you look at LSU's a lock. You look at the Pac-12, Oregon can't get in. You look at the Big Ten, Wisconsin can't get in. You look at the ACC, Virginia can't get in. This is the only game where both teams have legitimate playoff hopes, and that will be the most exciting, emotional, and hard-fought game of the entire championship weekend. I think it's by far the closest game, And I think it's going to be somewhere along the lines of a 35-30 Oklahoma victory. And it is going to be so much fun to watch. I think it will be back and forth. I think Baylor actually shows up in the second half this time. And I think Oklahoma shows up in the first half this time. And it is going to be really fun to watch. I cannot wait to see these two offenses go at it. Two of the better head coaches in the Big 12 out scheming each other, and it is going to be so much fun to watch.
Yes. And the reason why I agree with that, they will already see the outcome of the Pac-12 championship. So they'll know what they have to do. So if they see that Utah loses, both teams are going to literally be going at each other harder. I think it's an even better game if Utah loses. I think that makes the game so much better because they pretty much know if they win, they're going to get in. Assuming Georgia loses, but I assume Georgia loses, that would literally be a dogfight.
But you could argue if they see Utah win, they're going to play even harder to make a statement. And either way, those teams are going to be going at it, and it's going to be the hardest fought game of the season.
It's a rival game. It's just like
everything points to this game being maybe a top 5 game of the entire season in all of college football.
I have this potentially being higher scoring than the previous meeting. That was 34-31. I think both offenses are going to show up for the whole game. I have Oklahoma edging 45-42.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that.
I'm saying another game winner.
So y'all got
I'm
Oklahoma.
saying a game-winning field goal in the final minute.
Yeah, I got Oklahoma.
All right. So my favorite game of the weekend is Louisiana App State.
I knew you were going to go with that.
Bro.
And I'm
underrated App State. I'm sorry.
And I'm a bold-faced liar. That's not actually my favorite.
But
you just killed me. I was so excited to talk about that.
I just thought I'd give them some love. I mean, look,
that hurts.
No one said no one said our conference. I mean, that's a top 20 matchup.
Yeah, I mean, look, Cincinnati, Memphis this weekend. The winner of that arguably goes in. Then you got Hawaii, Boise State.
That's probably
as well.
I think that's the biggest sleeper one.
Some good games. So I just we had to mention them as championship weekend. So I have to include everyone.
Hey, don't. FAU UAB. Miami, Ohio.
Conference
playing?
USA game.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna. Hey, somebody will win. Hey, if FAU wins, it's a 10-win team.
Is FAU going to the top 4 if they win this game?
Oh yeah.
Are you
what are you
kidding me?
talking
FAU's
about?
number 1. Dude.
FAU's number 1.
Are you kidding me?
FAU's number 0. They're better than number 1.
That's what I'm saying.
They're ahead of number 1.
Put them in the FCS playoffs. Give them that win. They're going to win the FCS playoffs.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But to bring it back to our conversation, I'm actually really looking forward to this Utah-Oregon game. You guys have sold me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Tomorrow night.
I think I'm excited to see Utah play. Haven't caught a lot of their games, and be honest. But I think that Utah has the most to prove this weekend. More so than Baylor, Oklahoma, or even Georgia for that matter. I think Utah is the team with the most to play for.
We get to know the country gets to know who they are.
It's like, hello, I'm Utah. Nice to meet you.
Because they really, to be honest, if you take away Zach Moss, oh my gosh, the average fan, even some average fans don't even know who Zach Moss is.
I was going to say,
Zach Moss is going to be the Houston Texans running back next year, so I need him.
Most people east of the Mississippi probably wouldn't recognize that name.
Zach Moss is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL someday, probably in the next 4 years.
I may actually agree with you on that one, but regardless,
he's underrated.
I do agree. I think Utah has the most to prove. We look at these other teams competing. Georgia, obviously, with the loss to South Carolina, they're still at 4. They've obviously proven themselves to the committee. We look at Oklahoma, Baylor. Everyone knows who Oklahoma is. Everyone knows who Baylor is at this point. Those two teams know what their identity is. The country knows what their identity is. Not a whole lot of people have seen Utah play. This is their chance to really show. Again, they had primetime last week. I'm not sure how many people actually tuned into that primetime game. I can't say it was the most exciting or enticing matchup when you get Colorado, but this is a much different sort of game. And I think a lot of people are going to be curious. I think a lot of people are going to be rooting against Utah, actually, because I think a lot of people want Oklahoma in. But when people see what Utah is about, they are going to realize, wow, this team isn't actually Cinderella. This team actually is elite and deserves it. And I think I think it's going to be really exciting, and Utah is going to finally be able to show that to the country.
Yeah, remember their football Twitter, they called out what Paul Feinbaum said yesterday.
Yeah.
They called them out.
As they should.
I mean, you gotta stand up for your program. Be like, people actually want to watch us, because the college football is not just an East sport; it's also a West sport. So, and to be honest, some of the better players come from West Coast. So, too, they actually have good players as well, and a lot. This is a senior-oriented team too.
Absolutely.
They have some of these players on this, especially on this offense. They go back to high school. Tyler Huntley, Dimitri Simpkins, one of their wide receivers, Zach Moss. They go all the way back to high school. Like they go back further in college. They played together, and the fact that they might be able to play together in a playoff game, that will motivate them. There's a lot. This is a very close team, senior-oriented, experienced team, and I think they're going to pull through. I think they're built for the big moment, way more than Oregon has, and they've proven it. And I mean, it's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah.
Because we get to see new talent.
I agree. And I actually have a quick question for you, Jeremy. When do you believe was the last time Utah has ever played in a game of this magnitude?
When Alex Smith was there.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute.
So there is a lot on the line here for Utah
There
to
is.
show. So, yeah, Utah's going to show up. They're going to show out. They're going to take care of business.
All right. So this is what I'm going to do for the last 20 or so minutes we have here. 6 bowls. We're gonna say who it is, and we're gonna post this on the Twitter at Hitting the Field, and then we're going to pin it on that.
Oh,
We're gonna
yes,
pin it,
sir.
And then
Let's see if we're...
so the takes will be exposed to everyone on the internet that chooses to
Yes,
follow
sir.
Hitting the Field on Twitter. So we're going to start off. Where do you guys want to start off? Do you guys want to start off with the Final Four? Do you want to start off
We'll
with...
start with the newest 6.
No. Start with the playoffs.
We're going to do
Let's
just the
get
New Year's
that knocked
6.
out.
We're
Let's-
just do just the
right.
New Year's 6.
Let's
So,
get the playoff games knocked
all right,
out.
so
we
the
eliminate
Peach
those
Bowl.
four.
The Peach Bowl. Who goes to the Peach Bowl?
That will be Ohio State versus Utah.
Ohio State versus Utah. That's KP. Chris, what are you thinking?
Same.
Great minds
Ohio
think alike.
State and Utah.
And I'll give a brief explanation of that. So if anyone is unsure why Ohio State would be playing in Atlanta versus LSU, it's because the top seed gets to pick home field of the two playoffs.
Oh, really?
And Ohio State would never go out to the Fiesta Bowl with Utah that close to the Fiesta Bowl. It makes zero sense to give Utah that kind of home field. And that is why it will be Ohio State versus Utah in Atlanta and not in Glendale, Arizona.
Interesting. I'm going to go with Ohio State against Utah. Or no, not Utah.
Oh, I was going to say, you're
Oklahoma.
double crossing
Oklahoma.
right there.
No, Oklahoma. I got sidetracked for a second. Ohio State versus Oklahoma. I think that I'm feeling pretty good in that one. I think that obviously if Utah ends up being number 4, Ohio State's not going to choose to play in the Fiesta Bowl. Just because Utah would have the advantage there. So they go to the Peach Bowl. That would really suck for Utah, though, to go play all the way across the country.
Washington had to do it against Bama.
Yeah, I mean,
And I thought...
but hey, you'd rather be there than not at all.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, we've seen that. So, yeah.
That takes us to what?
so
Fiesta?
that now takes us to the Fiesta Bowl.
That's a
Number
pretty
2
easy
versus
one.
number 3.
That should be unanimous for the 3 of us.
Yeah,
2
so
LSU versus 3 Clemson.
yeah,
That's a pretty easy choice.
that I think across the board makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna go I'm writing this down on my phone so that I can tweet this later.
Good stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, LSU versus Clemson. So now we get to the Cotton Bowl.
This is where it gets a little more
The
difficult.
Cotton Bowl is the Big 12 And
the group of 5 is 100%
Cotton-
going to be in the Cotton Bowl.
Cotton Bowl is at large for both.
Yeah, well,
it's an at-large for both?
The Cotton is going to be the group of 5. I do believe Memphis gets that spot.
okay,
All right.
Memphis.
So you.
So
I'm going to give it Memphis.
So wait, you think Memphis, Chris? Is it Memphis or is it Cincinnati?
It's Memphis.
Okay.
I think Memphis is just better
Yeah.
than Cincinnati.
I'm gonna agree with y'all there. I think Memphis, they beat Cincinnati a week ago in the same spot, and they're going right back to the scene of the crime. I'm not expecting. I mean, obviously Cincinnati playing without their starting quarterback last week, but I do think Memphis does take it here.
Yeah, I think it's Memphis, and then I'm going to go with a little bit of an unconventional pick here for the Cotton Bowl. I am going to throw the Florida Gators against the Memphis Tigers in the Cotton Bowl.
All right, UF versus Memphis for the Cotton Bowl for Mr. Kyle
Because
Partain.
I believe when Oklahoma beats Baylor, Baylor will be dropped out of a New Year's Six Bowl.
Ooh, that'll be tough. That'll be tough. Chris, do you agree with UF playing Memphis, or do you think that spot goes to someone else? Because at this point, UF could be in consideration for Sugar Bowl. They could be in consideration for.
I think loser of LSU Georgia gets sugar.
No, if LSU loses, they're still in the playoffs. If Georgia loses, they're a lock for the Sugar Bowl.
I actually think Florida would get the sugar in that aspect if Georgia wins. Actually,
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah, because Georgia and LSU would both be in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I'm like
Florida-
I'm like over LSU. No, okay.
Florida would get the sugar if Georgia wins. But if Georgia loses,
what I'm
Florida
saying.
Florida's gonna get the Cotton versus Memphis.
Woo!
We will get that. Just think.
Okay.
Just think if we could have been in that game, we could have had a Florida UCF game.
Oh, in Dallas.
Yeah, we could have had that.
No, but so yeah, I do believe Florida gets that. The Sugar Bowl, obviously, we're all in the
I never
consensus.
said what I was saying.
Oh, fine.
Who's your
That's fine.
Cotton?
We'll talk after the show.
Sugar
Meet
Bowl?
me in the parking lot.
I'm fired.
Meet me in the
folks.
parking
I'm fired,
lot.
folks.
Sugar Bowl?
Hey,
Yeah.
it's been a fun season.
No,
Job
so-
security is not here.
where was I? The Cotton Bowl. So the Cotton Bowl
Yeah.
takes place when December
It's the 31st. I want to say.
31st.
Yeah, 31st
Man.
or first.
Is it the first? I don't know when it is.
It's in December or
Check the
January.
28th. Check the 28th.
Oh yeah, usually the group of 5 game is. These aren't New Year's 6 games. Go up to top.
We're looking it up
Yeah,
on the
here you
computer.
go.
Here.
Oh,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes it much
All
more
right.
confusing.
Okay, that makes it
December 28th. I was correct.
December 28th. Yes,
we
the
do
same day as both the semifinals.
That is the best bowl game date or day of bowl games the entire season.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
There you go. And so this is where I'll go with. So Memphis makes it for me as the group of 5 team. And if you go outside of that, I think, man, I would probably have to agree with you guys. I think
Yeah,
it's gonna be
it just
Florida.
makes sense, and
It
that would
does.
be an exciting
I'm
game.
trying to find a reason to disagree with you guys.
I think
but
that's a
can't.
very fun game.
Yeah,
too.
it'll be a good game for
that
sure.
may actually be the best
Yeah.
of the non-playoff
It's
New
a
Year's
good
Six games.
it's a good neutral site, I think, for both teams. It's not super far from their home. I don't think this is like a home game for Memphis, even though they're technically closer. I think this is because Florida will travel more than Memphis will travel. So
Probably.
I think I would look forward to that game.
Yeah.
That sounds like an exciting game.
I like that.
So now we have the Orange Bowl. The
this will
Orange
be-
Bowl. This is an ACC.
I'm gonna tell you this one thing. That will be probably the worst New Year's 6 game.
Yeah,
So who
probably.
from the ACC gets in? Is it
It's
Virginia?
It's Virginia.
it's-
I think Virginia's a virtual lock.
Yeah, I don't see any way that it's not Virginia, honestly. I mean, the way they won their division, the only way I believe the only other team from the ACC that would even be in remote consideration would be Wake. And the way Wake got hammered by Clemson, I don't think Wake has a shot at the New Year's Six. So I think Virginia's in if Clemson wins the ACC, which they should.
Okay. So yeah,
we're gonna-
UVA versus which team? We'll start with Kyle.
KP is going to go with Penn State.
Penn State. Okay. All right. Penn State, UVA, and then Christopher Wolf. Do you agree with Penn State going in there, or do you have another?
don't know if there is another one.
I
don't.
You could
I
take
can
Wisconsin.
name one.
You could take Wisconsin.
I can name one.
I think Wisconsin's going to the Rose Bowl regardless. In my total opinion, because they already have they have the wins.
Who do you got, Jeremy?
Give me.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
But,
you want to pull the trigger on number 11, don't you?
Give me Auburn.
I knew it. Yep, you
Give
want
me
to pull
Auburn.
the trigger on number 11.
Auburn, Virginia. That's
Give
an
me
interesting
Auburn,
game.
and I think my future selections will tell you why I think Auburn.
Okay.
So I have Auburn in the Orange Bowl.
Okay.
Remember they were
Chris,
I wouldn't hate that.
Penn
pick.
State or Auburn, or you deciding to throw another one in the ring?
Just say Baylor for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Just be different. Just say Baylor.
Well, I don't think Baylor
They
can.
can't.
I don't.
It's
I
Big
don't-
Ten,
yeah.
SEC, or Notre Dame. You could say Notre Dame.
No,
Baylor has no chance.
No, they're ranked. They're ranked even behind Alabama.
Dame. Yeah, Notre Dame's out of that.
Now Alabama and Notre Dame could play each other potentially.
It could be Alabama.
That could be a Citrus Bowl or something.
Give me Bama Notre Dame for the Outback Bowl, or maybe Alabama Michigan. How about that?
Do something like that. Two teams that horribly underachieved.
Yeah. All right. So Chris,
I'm gonna go Penn State, Virginia.
Yes.
All right.
Because
Yes.
I think Wisconsin will be high enough to. I don't think they're dropping far. Even though Penn State would get the Rose Bowl, if they're ranked higher than Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin isn't going to drop much at all.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I expect them. I expect Wisconsin to be ahead of them. They'll go to the Rose Bowl, and because I think they had two dominating wins over Minnesota and Michigan. I think that will deserve it for them. But that's the reason. I think Bama's too low. Bama, they can't jump. They can't really jump anywhere. So it's like,
yeah.
all Bama can do is jump back. Because if Oregon wins, Oregon would jump Bama.
Yeah.
So I don't think Bama is going to get New Year's Six this year. So
I don't think they can.
Penn State. I think Penn State.
They're
is just
the number.
neutral team.
They're the number 5 team in the SEC.
The only way
they're talking
they
about
get it
5
is-
teams in the SEC.
The only way they get it is if Georgia beats LSU.
Georgia-
and that's
yeah.
a stretch even with that.
Because then Georgia would be in the top 4 with LSU.
It bumps Florida up to sugar,
bumps
that
Florida
bumps
up to
Auburn
sugar.
to cotton, and then
Yeah.
potential orange for Bama.
Yep.
So it's an awful lot that has to happen.
Yeah. All right. So now let's move on. We have the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl.
I think
Big
everyone-
10, Pac-12.
Jeremy's going to be the only one
I'm gonna
differing,
go with
'cause
Utah.
I know you got Utah.
I'm going to go Utah, and I'm going to go Penn State. I think Penn State, Utah is the Rose Bowl.
Mine's pretty easy. I'm going Wisconsin, Oregon.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I think when we both have Utah in the playoffs, so the only other option here that even makes sense from the Pac-12 is Oregon. And then I do believe Wisconsin will be given the benefit of the doubt for having to play Ohio State in an extra game this
Twice.
season.
Again, twice.
And it's not even playing them twice. It's that they had to play the number 1 team in the land in a
Again.
game that 99% of college football teams don't have to play. I think it's hard to penalize Wisconsin too much for that kind of game, and I do believe Wisconsin stays in front of Penn State and is going to be Oregon-Wisconsin for the Rose.
Okay. And then we have the Sugar Bowl.
This one has
Big 12 SEC.
mad potential because it is rematch time between Oklahoma and Georgia from 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, usually these are pretty easy to get if you get once you say your playoffs. These kind of fall into place.
Yeah, the automatic bids. It's real easy to pick them, and I love this matchup. Georgia Oklahoma, that has some serious potential.
And I'm pretty sure that yours will be probably Baylor.
I would say Baylor, and
Yeah.
I would say Baylor, Georgia.
So, yeah, because we're indifferent. I knew our Sugars and Rose would be different because we're indifferent on those two teams.
And a lot of this, the New Year's Six changes quite a bit depending on the outcome of the SEC championship and the outcome of the Big 12 and the Pac-12 championship games. So obviously those 3 games have to be played, but if it plays out the way that I expect it to, do not be shocked if these are your New Year's Six matchups.
Yeah.
In which case, Jeremy, out of those games, which excites you the most? I'm curious.
Of the 6?
Of the 6.
So, of my 6, I would probably go with LSU Clemson.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I just that's the only one with 2
That
undefeated
is
teams.
the
But if I had to pick a runner-up, I would probably go with either. I'd probably go with Ohio State, Oklahoma too.
Really?
I mean, I
I think I'd take Florida Memphis. That's exciting.
that's an exciting game.
I don't know. Something about the group of 5 team playing in the New Year's Six game. It's always a good game.
I mean, even
except for you, Western Michigan, you let us down. But it's always a good game.
I'll give the props. I'll give the props to Western Michigan though. They didn't play terribly.
No, they weren't the worst.
They played better than I thought they would.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys: if Auburn doesn't go to a New Year's Six bowl, where do they go? Like the Outback Bowl or something like that?
There's Citrus
Bowl?
here in Orlando.
Citrus is the best. Citrus probably is the best non college football playoff.
Yeah.
Or New Year's Six type game. That's probably the best one.
Yeah, I think they end up in the Citrus against, I don't know, someone from the Big Ten probably.
Probably Michigan or
probably Minnesota.
Probably Michigan or Minnesota.
I think they'd give it to Minnesota just because I think something about a Michigan-Alabama matchup in the Outback Bowl is oddly enticing because of the names of those two brands, and I think there's a lot of people that would like to see Michigan versus Alabama. I can't remember the last time those two teams have played.
Jim Harbaugh versus Nick Saban.
But those are some serious, seriously historic programs, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
So I'm going to recite our New Year's Six bowls out loud. You two have ironically the same lineup.
Oh wow! Great minds think alike.
Chris and Kyle, this is their lineup. They have Ohio State versus Utah in the Peach Bowl, 1-4. The LSU Clemson matchup in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, I'm just going to ask you guys, like, quick fire, say your winners for each of these games.
All right.
So, we'll start out with the Sugar Bowl. I'll work my way down and up. Georgia, Oklahoma. Who wins the Sugar Bowl?
Oklahoma.
I think Georgia wins.
Georgia. Split on there.
Yes.
Rose.
Differences.
Rose Bowl. Wisconsin versus Oregon.
I pick Oregon.
I take Oregon as well.
Oregon. Orange Bowl. Virginia versus Penn State.
Penn State.
I'm going to go extremely out of the realm.
Don't do it.
I'm going to say Virginia would upset them because I don't know the status of Sean Clifford. Who knows if he'll play in that game?
That's a bad trigger to pull. That's a bad trigger to pull.
State.
There was always that one game where nobody sees coming.
I love Penn State. My dad went there. My favorite high school teacher went there.
Our colleague Chris Chan will hate me when he hears this.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I have a lot of people, ironically, from Penn State that I know and that I care about deeply. So I'm for Penn State.
Yeah, I take Penn State in that one.
Cotton Bowl, Florida, Memphis.
This is the one people would want to trigger on, but
you got to do it.
I'm going Florida close. I'm going Florida close because I think this offense is a lot better right now than it had been the start of the season. And I think combined, I actually this has the potential to be kind of a higher scoring game than people think. Because Memphis' offense is really good. It's very underrated. It's not valued enough. Kenneth Gainwell is really good. Gibson's really good. Brady White's been much better this season. They have some good Coxie is a good receiver. So I think they have enough offensive firepower. I just don't think their defense will stop. Yeah. Their defense won't play well.
Florida, Memphis.
I'm taking Memphis.
All right, Memphis.
Mike Norvell.
Beautiful. Mike Norvell for the win. I'm going to go with Memphis, too. So I'll go right now. My Sugar Bowl, Georgia, Baylor. I'm going to pick Georgia in that one. I really like Georgia in that game. Rose Bowl, Penn State, Utah. I'm going to go with Utah. I give them and they'll be very disappointed because they're going to win out and only win the Rose Bowl. It's going to be really unfortunate. And then Virginia, Auburn. I'm going to go with Auburn. And then Florida, Memphis, my Cotton Bowl. I'm going to go with Memphis.
It's a good pick.
For the AAC. All right, now we get to our Final Four. The creme de la creme. Our Fiesta Bowls are the same. So LSU, Clemson. Both of the teams are undefeated. It's a very big neutral site game, although LSU did play at the Fiesta Bowl a year ago. But who takes the Fiesta Bowl between LSU and Clemson? What are we saying, guys?
It will be Clemson.
Clemson to beat LSU.
Knocks off
Could you
LSU.
believe that LSU season ends in a loss to Clemson in the semifinal?
Absolutely.
After all they've been through this year.
Absolutely.
LSU won the Fiesta Bowl last year.
Yeah, Clemson's been to the Fiesta Bowl 3 out of the past 5 postseasons.
True.
They are really familiar with the area. Their fans travel really well. Clemson is extremely talented, and a lot of people are sleeping on them. They have the chip on the shoulder, not LSU. This game goes to Clemson, although it's a very close one.
Okay. Chris.
It's a tough one.
Well, look at the last Heisman Trophy winners. Got Kyler Murray. You know what he did? He won the Heisman.
And
Lost his
lost.
bowl game. You want to go to the next year? Baker Mayfield. He won the Heisman. What did he do in his bowl game?
Took an L.
Lamar Jackson. He won the Heisman. What did he do in his bowl game?
Took an L.
That ends. Joe Burrow.
I thought you were going with the trend. I thought you were going with the trend.
He was driving around the road and then went veered right.
Good misdirection.
I'm gonna go.
I think LSU wins because I think they're just having this great season. I think they're gonna continue. Joe Burrow has been having one of the best seasons ever that I've ever seen in college football.
Yeah, it is amazing.
And I think they win. I think they win a close game. I think it's a close shootout.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with LSU too. I just think that Clemson, although they have proven this year that they are one of the best teams in the country, I just think that LSU is on some kind of different run.
It's a dream season.
It's a dream season. Like, you could not have asked for more if you're LSU. So I'm going to go with LSU over Clemson. Then you have the Peach Bowl. I have Ohio State and Oklahoma. I'm going to go with Ohio State. I do think Ohio State is one of the top 2 teams in the country, and I think they beat anyone except for maybe LSU.
Yeah, I take Ohio State as well.
LSU is the only team I would maybe consider picking against Ohio State. Maybe. I'm about to figure out if I'm going to pick against them or not.
Ohio State, deceptively close.
Well, I don't know.
Deceptively. I'm not going to say it's going to be close. Closer than everyone thinks.
What does deceptively close mean to you?
10 points.
Oh, that's a lot closer than I give it.
10. I think this Ohio State team doesn't really know much about Utah. I think they're going to throw stuff at them they don't really see, and I think they will catch them off guard for a while. But then I think this Ohio State team will figure them out, and then they'll close them out in like the mid-third quarter, fourth quarter, almost like the Penn State game.
No, that's fair.
Ish.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. I think Utah would keep it close for a bit, but then because their defense will keep them in it.
Okay.
The offense will get fired a little bit. They'll get some short fields maybe. They may force a turnover or two, get short fields for touchdowns. But in the end, they had the best player in the country in Chase Young. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Justin Fields. They got, I think, at this point in this season, I know
where you're going. Don't do it.
No.
He's not better than Najee Harris. J.K. Dobbins is an amazing talent, but he's not better than J.K. Dobbins than Najee Harris.
They're the hottest running back.
So you got Ohio State.
Ohio State
over Utah. Ohio State over Utah.
31-21.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. So now we're short on time, so I'm just going to ask for a name. I'm not going to ask for no reasoning behind it. We can talk about it later. And we will have a podcast before it because it is on the 13th.
All right.
Of January. So we will be back for a full week, and we will have another podcast in January discussing the national championship. But I'm going to ask you guys who wins the national championship. We all have the same. It's Ohio State, LSU. Or no, you have Ohio State, Clemson on the far right, KP. Ohio State, Clemson. KP, who takes it? Clemson Tigers repeat.
Yep, national champions.
All right. National champion, Chris. Who is it? Ohio State or LSU?
LSU.
And I have Ohio State.
Oh, I love it. 3 different champions. I love it.
I have Ohio State.
I love it.
I think that their game speaks for themselves. But
one of us is going to be right.
One of us. If one of us isn't right, though, we're in for one
Utah
hell of a playoffs.
or even Baylor. Nobody even picked Baylor.
If one of us is not right, we are in for one hell of a playoffs.
Absolutely.
But that is all the time we have today on the Hitting the Field podcast. Kyle Partain, Chris Wolf, thank you so much for joining me today. We will be back on Monday for another for part 3 of our finals week marathon at the Hitting the Field podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you guys Monday morning. Have a great weekend filled with football.
Yep.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated chance, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back, okay? Always locked in, I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.